Saturday, October 24th, 1942. In the sweltering jungles of Guadalcanal, thousands of soldiers from the Imperial Japanese Army launch a fierce assault against line after line of Marines defending Henderson Field. Outnumbered and running low on ammunition, one Marine would take the fight directly to the advancing enemy, commanding 2 machine gun sections, single-handedly cutting down wave after wave of enemy forces with an M1917 Browning machine gun, his bayonet, and his 1911, allowing his Marines to secure victory. This is the story of Medal of Honor recipient John Basilone. In 1934, 18-year-old New Jersey native and second-generation Italian-American John Basilone enlists in the United States Army, spending the next 3 years primarily stationed in the Philippines, where he became known as a boxing prospect in unit-level boxing matches after winning multiple championships and local fame, earning himself the nickname Manila John. However, Basilone returned stateside to New Jersey and left the Army altogether by 1937, but soon, Basilone would regret it, as the world was on the brink of war, beginning that same year as Japan launched a full-scale invasion on China, and not even a year later, Germany annexed Austria, demonstrating their intention to expand their influence across Europe. And by 1939, the Germans did just that.
Germany has invaded Poland. General mobilization has been ordered in Britain and France.
And as America prepared for an impending war, Basilone enlisted once again in 1940. But this time as a Marine, where he was quickly promoted to the rank of Private First Class and assigned to the 1st Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment, where his first assignments focused on training and preparation, where he honed his skills as a machine gunner, learning to handle the legendary 30 cal machine gun, the M1917 Browning. Basilone thrived in this role and quickly demonstrated an intuitive grasp of machine guns and machine gun tactics, from defending fortified positions to holding ground under heavy assault, and Basilone continued to rise through the ranks, eventually earning the title of corporal, and before long, he was promoted once again to sergeant. And on December 7th of 1941, Basilone and his unit would be called upon following the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor.
The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
And only months later, the 5th Marine Regiment was folded into the newly formed 1st Marine Division and preparing for deployment to the Pacific as part of America's first offensive against Japanese forces. And by the summer of 1942, as the Allied forces prepared for the pivotal Guadalcanal campaign, Basilone and the Marines of the 1st Division boarded ships and set out for the Pacific with the mission of securing and holding Henderson Field, a critical airstrip that the Japanese had been constructing to control air routes in the South Pacific. And this field was strategically vital. If the Allies could hold it, they could launch their attacks on Japanese supply lines. However, Guadalcanal itself was a brutal environment, dense with jungle and swamps, teeming with mosquitoes, disease, oppressive heat, and a violent and entrenched enemy, with the Japanese launching guerrilla-style surprise attacks and night raids that left the American forces on edge 24 hours a day. Basilone's unit was tasked with defending the perimeter of Henderson Field, but their mission was complicated by logistical issues. resupply lines were thin, and the Marines often went hungry as food and ammunition ran low, while Japanese naval forces dominated the surrounding waters at night, slipping supplies to their forces on island in a strategy known as the Tokyo Express. These nightly reinforcements meant the Japanese troops were well fed and well supplied, leaving the Marines to fight not only a strong enemy, but exhaustion, malnutrition, and malaria. By August of that same year, Basilone and his men would find themselves in the middle of the Battle of the Tenaru River, where a large force of Japanese troops launched a fierce assault on the Marines' defensive lines, resulting in a brutal, close-quarters battle fought in the dark, where Basilone held off wave after wave of Japanese soldiers. After facing frantic all-out banzai assaults without even flinching, Basilone's attitude and skills as a machine gunner and his ability to lead in high-stress situations led him to take on more responsibility. And as the defensive lines around Henderson Field were under near constant pressure, Basilone constantly delegated roles to maintain their line. And by October, the Japanese were determined to mount a decisive counterattack to reclaim Henderson Field. Reinforcements from the 17th Japanese Army arrived on Guadalcanal, bringing thousands of fresh troops with one mission: drive the Americans off Guadalcanal. Basilone was stationed with his machine gun near the Tenaru River, defending a narrow pass along the Lunga perimeter that was critical to holding Henderson Field. The Marines around him were dug in, fatigued but alert, and soon enough, word had come down that the Japanese were on the move and preparing to execute their push. And shortly after nightfall, the jungle came alive with the movement of 3,000 Japanese soldiers along the Lunga perimeter, initiating their attack with mortar fire and waves of riflemen in banzai-style charges. It was a brutal and chaotic onslaught, with grenades exploding and shrapnel screeching through the air. Basilone, in command of two M1917 Brownings, strategically positioned to cover the narrow pass where the Japanese were funneling through as they advanced. And as they did, Basilone opened fire on their choke point, tearing down tightly packed troops and halting the first wave of attackers. But the second wave was relentless and pressured on, taking out one of Basilone's gun crews in the process, until Basilone laid out the second wave with his .30 cal. And as his crew's machine gun fell silent and the position was in danger of being overrun, without hesitation, Basilone sprang into action, grabbing 90 pounds of ammunition and equipment and sprinting nearly 200 yards through enemy fire to reach the downed gun. Along the way, Basilone encountered Japanese soldiers who had slipped through the line and smoked him with his Colt 45 and killed another with his bayonet. Once he reached the disabled gun, Basilone immediately began clearing jams, reloading, and continuing to lay fire. His tactical instincts took over, all while coordinating with the other gunners in his section, as he alternated between laying down suppressive fire and directing his crew, prioritizing targets to keep the Japanese from breaking through. And as the Japanese forces advanced closer, he shifted to close-range engagement, picking off more attackers with his pistol, while maintaining control over the machine guns. And the machine gun barrels burned so intensely that Basilone's specialized gloves disintegrated, leaving him to handle the searing hot metal barehanded, burning his arms and his hands. But he didn't stop. He continued to lay fire, replacing barrels as they overheated, adjusting positions amid the relentless onslaught. Basilone continued laying fire on the choke point, resulting in bodies piling so high they were obstructing the Marines' field of fire. The carnage was overwhelming. Basilone and his men were forced to leave the gun pits to knock down the growing wall of bodies to clear their field of fire so they could continue to repel the assault. At one point, Basilone was the only machine gunner left in his section, but he refused to abandon his post. Fighting alone, he used both machine guns to cover the line, switching back and forth between them to maintain a continuous rate of fire. In total, he and his crew killed at least 38 Japanese soldiers. By the time reinforcements arrived to relieve Basilone's position, he was one of the only 3 Marines still standing. Despite the Marine success at Henderson Field, only weeks later, the Japanese would launch yet another devastating assault on the airfield, killing dozens of Marines in what became known as the November Offensive. Meanwhile, Basilone was flown stateside and thrust into the limelight as the hero of Guadalcanal, and was soon awarded the Medal of Honor by Franklin D. Roosevelt on May 21st of 1943, where he was ultimately puppeteered as a war bond ambassador, touring the nation, gaining celebrity status. But with his mind on the Pacific, John Basilone struggled to accept it.
Sergeant, can you tell us something about how you happened to get this medal? You must have mowed them down.
I was in a good outfit with good men. I just happened to be there, and any man would have done the same in my place.
Spoken just like a Marine. Sergeant, where does your old man come from?
My father comes from Naples.
My father comes from Georgia. We're Americans.
Refusing to live large, while his fellow Marines died, even refusing the rank of officer, Basilone went back. He reported to Camp Pendleton, where he would meet and marry his wife, Sergeant Lena Rigi, in 1944. By 1945, Basilone joined up with the 5th Marine Division, 1st Battalion, 27th Marine Regiment, and deployed to the Pacific once more, bound for the invasion of Iwo Jima. And on February 19th of that year, Basilone's unit landed on Red Beach 2 under relentless Japanese fire. As soon as the Marines hit the shore, they were met with mortar, artillery, and machine gun fire from concealed positions on the island's higher ground. But without hesitation, Basilone led his machine gun section across the beach, destroying a heavily fortified Japanese blockhouse with grenades to clear a path for the pinned down Marines. He then guided a trapped Marine tank through a minefield under intense fire, helping it rejoin the advance. And as he moved along the edge of the beach, Basilone was struck by mortar shrapnel hours into the invasion and succumbed to his wounds. Basilone was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross for his heroism on Iwo Jima, adding to his already distinguished Medal of Honor, making him one of the few Marines in history to earn both honors. Basilone's story became an essential part of Marine Corps training, in ceremonies, and on bases around the world of the bravery that defines a Marine.